Week 1 is in the books in college football. Thankfully for us, we hit 3-0 on our picks from last week. Can we stay perfect? I have 4 NCAA football picks for you in this video. Last week, we won with under 57 points in the Western Michigan-Wisconsin game, which ended with 42 points. Under 24.5 points in the first half of the Georgia-Clemson showdown, where only 6 points were scored through one half. And finally, the Indiana Hoosiers minus 6.5 points in the first quarter, who led 14-0 at that point in the game. Way to go, and thank you so much for watching that video. Subscribe to the best sports betting show right now. It only takes 2 seconds to smash the subscribe button. With week 2, there is some mud in the water on several teams, and some blood in the water on others. We want to attack before the books get everything figured out. This week we have 4 picks we like in college football. Let's kick it off! This Saturday at noon, the Army Black Knights are traveling down to South Florida to take on the Florida Atlantic Owls. I have a side I like on this game. But first, let's analyze the matchup. The triple option running attack that Army brings makes nearly every game of theirs a threat to go under. They always keep their conservative offense moving, and thus the clock does too. Last week, Army rattled off 375 yards on the ground and made only 8 attempts through the air. Granted, it was against Lehigh, but Army gave the ball to 9 different players to gain yards from scrimmage. Most of it was QB Bryson Daly. This week, I would expect more of the same, keep the clock rolling. Last week, FAU attempted to rally from down 16 points to nearly defeat Michigan State in East Lansing. While they fell short, they showed us something about their squad. After giving up an explosive 63-yard play that led to a score, the Owls' defense locked down and shut the Spartans down for 2.5 quarters. This week, they will have to do more of the same. They will need to remain disciplined and make tackles against a well-disciplined service academy. The Owls' offense is absolutely nothing to write home about, but they showed a few sparks in the game. I think this week we will see a heavy dose of quarterback Cam Fancher again. Last week he attempted 25 passes and was credited with 25 runs, although 7 of those were sacks. Still not sure why college counts a sack as a failed run. Remember to be careful on quarterback rushing stat props for just that reason. When Fancher was not throwing interceptions or taking sacks, he was pushing a 100-yard day on the ground. Last week, Army allowed 5.2 yards per carry to Lehigh, and I expect Fancher and FAU to exploit that. I think this is begging for us to take the under in what looks to be a clock-running slobber knocker. I don't hate that bet as long as it stays above the key number of 41. However, something else has caught my eye. There was a report that upwards of 78% of the public bets came in taking Army when they got the hook at plus 3.5. However, there are still some books that have the line at minus 3. We are on a contrarian move and backing FAU at home minus 3 this Saturday. 3 is a big number on this game. I don't like minus 3.5 as much, of course, and I would be tempted to buy it down to 3. Reminder, don't overpay when buying down a line. Books have different policies on this hack. You really don't want to pay more than 15 cents to get down to a key number like 3 or 7. But that's a whole video unto itself. We are really looking for a relatively uneventful game, and FAU covers the 3 points, in my humble opinion. Last week, we focused on unders really being a target with the new helmet communicators and running clock rules. I think week 2 will have a few more chances to exploit that factor. First up is South Carolina at Kentucky on Saturday at 3:30. We are going to focus on the under 43 points in that game. We like it all the way down to 41.5. This SEC clash features two programs that are pointed to opposite futures. I think Kentucky has done about as well as it can, considering its limitations. It currently stands as an SEC also-ran and a second-tier organization. However, the Wildcats often have moments where it competes like it really wants to be a top-tier team. For South Carolina, on the other hand, as I said in the Futures episode, I just don't have any faith in this team, nor do I think their future looks bright. Last week, the Kentucky Wildcats easily controlled the game at home against the hapless Southern Mississippi Golden Eagles, winning 31-0. There was very little exciting about this game, and I think that's the way head coach Mark Stoops likes it. Workmanlike, punch-you-in-the-face football. With only 42 offensive plays from scrimmage in the weather-shortened game, Kentucky just went to work, ran a little, threw a little, and got out of there with a win. On the other side of the ball, the defense was stout and held Southern Miss to 5 net rushing yards. What? I think that defense comes to play again on Saturday. Meanwhile, the Gamecocks had to rally to get a fourth quarter score to come from behind to knock off lost in the middle of Sun Belt Conference Old Dominion 23-19 last week. Looking at the stat sheet, you saw 56 rushing attempts. 56. Run right, run left, run middle. The old run, punt strategy. Perfect for a running clock. Watching that game, you would simply say South Carolina's offense looks, in a word, gross. You might say, well, they put up 23 points. True. Let me read off the stats of 17 of those points on 3 drives. 3 plays for 3 yards, TD. 5 plays for 13 yards, field goal. And the go-ahead TD, 2 plays for 6 yards. Although they won the most important stat, those were not impressive drives. Old Dominion handed them field position. Kentucky and Stoops will not be having any of that nonsense. With most every snap last week, Kentucky had the play clock down to 10 seconds or less. Not exactly the up-tempo offense that Kentucky insiders were boasting about in the offseason. Now they did not need to run up-tempo against an inferior Southern Miss, nor do I think they will need to against a gross South Carolina team. I think Kentucky comes out, establishes control. I kinda like the Kentucky -3 in the first quarter if you can still find it. But I think they control early and then put a stranglehold on the game and the clock. Kentucky has not won the last 2 games against the Gamecocks, but I suspect they will this year. The history between these two is very bizarre. Often, the better team does not win. However, something that is consistent is the under. 7 of the last 8 matchups have been under 40 points. We are hoping for that trend to continue, so it makes it easy for us to take the under 43 on the South Carolina-Kentucky. Now, the next under will go a little further west to Lincoln, Nebraska. Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes go into Nebraska to take on the Cornhuskers Saturday night at 7:30 Eastern. One of these clubs have gotten a lot of press over the past season and the off-season, and most all of it is just hype. Deion Sanders, Coach Prime. Okay, we got that out of the way. And the other team has quietly been garnering some love from the football faithful. How will this battle turn out? I think there are a variety of outcomes for this one. The one most likely for me is a slow start while they each feel the other out. Therefore, I am on the first half under 28.5. The line has moved down to 28 with most bookies before I made this video, but I still like the bet. I think asking for more points than that is a lot to ask for. Colorado comes in off a game in which they really could not run the ball, nor did it seem like they really tried. Ignoring QB scrambles, their run rate was 33%. Since there is merit to the concern that Coach Sanders is out to pad the passing stats for his son, Shedeur, tallying 445 yards through the air last week, I think for that reason, Coach Matt Rhule and Nebraska will sit back and keep things in front of them, almost daring the Buffaloes to run the ball. With a weak offensive line, Colorado will probably struggle the first few drives. They are definitely capable of big plays, with talents Joe Horn Jr. and Travis Hunter leading the charge. I think Nebraska would do itself a favor to attempt to slow those two future NFLers down. On the flip, Colorado's defense is mediocre at best and will almost definitely do the same thing against young Cornhusker quarterback Dylan Raiola. Sit back a little. I think Nebraska will see that and come out slow to try to establish the run and attempt control early with a simple high percentage attack. The best way to frustrate an explosive offense is keep them on the sidelines, right? So let's have Nebraska start the game slowly, run the ball, drain the clock, and let's take that low score like 16-7 into the half and cash the ticket. First half under 28.5 or 28 points. I know betting unders in most sports is boring to cheer for. I know, but value is value, and I think this next one is right in line. On an under, you're actually cheering for nothing to happen, and you're happy when teams fail to produce. When we say fail to produce, is the first thing that comes to your mind the Clemson offense? Yeah, me too. No touchdowns last week. We nailed it last week, and I think we should go back to the well again and take another Clemson under. This time, we will target the full game at under 53 points. I got it earlier in the week at 55.5, but I like it down to the key number of 52. Clearly, I am down on Clemson so far. We picked them to go under 9.5 wins for the season, and we picked them to struggle last week against powerhouse Georgia. But who doesn't struggle against the Dogs? This is a big week for Coach Sweeney and the 25th ranked Clemson Tigers, as they welcome in the Mountaineers from Appalachian State. App State has made a living in recent years beating teams they should not. This particular game, they will make approximately $1.25 million to go to Death Valley for a chance to shock the world again. I don't think they will be able to do it, but it will make for some interesting drama if they could pull off the upset. If App State is able to pull off an upset, it will be because of quarterback Joey Aguilar. He was the Sun Belt's preseason Offensive Player of the Year pick, and his 326 yards passing last week highlighted the 38-10 win over East Tennessee State. Their relatively balanced attack will need to be hitting on all cylinders to make it happen this week against stiffer competition. A positive thing we learned last weekend about Clemson is that their defense is pretty decent. I think the score of the Georgia game at first says that's not true, but I think they handled the Bulldogs pretty well for a lot of that game. Georgia's adjustments at halftime really started to take a toll on the Clemson D. Then, certainly by the end of the game, the Tigers had one foot on the bus to get back home. All in all, they did as good as could be expected. I think against the Mountaineers, Clemson will put the clamps on early and then hold on as long as they can. It's to be expected with an inept offense, your defense may be on the field a lot. Not good news for the men in orange. That may cause us some heartache as this game wears on. I think they should feed running back Phil Moffa the ball early and often and do their best to keep the D rested for the second half. So, I really like the full game under 53 points. I smell a defensive touchdown for the Tigers, and I have this game finishing with Clemson winning 29-16. I have shared 6 NFL picks for week 1 in another video. Have you seen it? If not, go check out that video by clicking the little card appearing in the bottom left corner of your screen right now if you are viewing from your laptop. If you are on mobile, simply search for NFL Picks Professor MJ. And you will quickly find this video whose goal is to grow your bankroll. I'm Professor MJ from Quebec City in Canada. Have a great and lucrative weekend, my faithful bunch of bookie crushers!